Hello everyone, welcome back to the OneTalk podcast. You're here with your host Ryan McCarthy. Today we are joined by Kit Tomlinson. Kit is a naturopath and an absolute wealth of knowledge. Like on this episode, we went so deep on so many important topics that I feel like personally the world needs to hear. And some of the topics that we talked about was foods that cause inflammation in the brain and the body and how they can bring negative side effects to our life and our overall well-being and health. So things like sugars, seed oils and trans fat, processed foods and preservatives, and gluten as well. We go on a deep dive on all of those things, and it brings so much awareness around inflammation in the body and the brain and why we need to be cautious of the foods and even the liquids that we consume. We also touch on nutrient deficiencies within the body. So these are some of the most common deficiencies we see in humans. So we touch deeply on B1, B6, B9, B12, magnesium, vitamin D, iron. And we also touched on genetic issues, MTHFR. And I can give like an overall basis right now, but I feel like I won't do it justice. This episode just speaks for itself with the amount of knowledge within it. So I highly recommend just soak all of this in and just enjoy it, but also make sure you take something away from this episode that you can implement into your life to start seeing differences and changes and start seeing yourself evolve. And in other news, if you could please share this podcast around, it helps us get this message out there to a larger audience. It helps this podcast grow, and in return, it helps me a lot, but it helps just getting this information out there to people. It helps getting this free resource and information out there and reach a larger audience. So if you could do that for me, it would mean a lot. If you could leave a rating as well, it would mean so much too. But without further ado, let's welcome Kit. Welcome, Kit. How you going?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for joining us today. I was very interested in the topics we're going to touch on today, and when I found yourself and the work that you do, very informative, but also very inspiring to see that this message is getting put out there, because I feel like all of this information is important for people to understand and to learn.
You. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'd love to start with what is it that you do, just to help myself and the audience understand more. And also I'd like to find out why you got into this type of work in the first place as well.
Sure, yes. So I am a naturopath. I currently work in a clinic in Tweed Heads, and I have a special interest in chronic conditions, so autoimmunity, gut health, and mental health. And I see a lot of clients every week and just help them with that. Yeah. Oh, awesome. And what made you want to get into this type of work to be able to be a service to the world? Yes, that's my big why. As a child, I had a lot of physical and mental health issues, and I wasn't getting any results through the mainstream sort of allopathic medicine. I was a bit stuck in a cycle of just getting kind of worse. So taking for instance, antibiotics, and then that destroying my gut health and getting more sick and run down and just being stuck in this loop. And I, even from a young age, I kind of had this intuitive knowing that herbs would probably help me. My mum had a herb garden, and I started looking into it and experimenting with just the culinary herbs that she had, and I sort of started to feel their effect. And I really wanted to see a naturopath, but there was quite a financial barrier, and there is quite a financial barrier to it, so I wasn't able to. And so I just decided that I'd teach myself. And so I tried to, throughout my teen years, and then I went on to study it and become a naturopath. So I really am passionate about helping people, and it's particularly those with a financial barrier. So I do a bit of community work as well. And I always have this thought where I'm like, I wish I knew now what I knew back then, because I would just save myself so much time and suffering. So I want to sort of spare people who are sort of at a dead end with their chronic health issues, and to start getting like real sustainable lasting change. So yeah, that's my big driver, is having experienced this like suffering, and then also the magic of nutrition and herbal medicine. And then, just wanting to share that and help people.
Oh, awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful to see when you go through your own trials and tribulations, but then want to use that experience to acquire knowledge to want to give back to people. I feel like people that are in community service or in the line of helping people, usually they have their own background of their own trials and tribulations through life, and they want to give back. So I feel like, having the evidence-based experience, but also having the personal experience is very valuable in this industry.
Definitely. I had a supervisor at uni when we were in the clinic subjects and learning how to take consults, and she was also an astrologer, and she would always say to us, like, what is your Chiron? And Chiron is a planet, but it's also Greek mythology, and it's about a wounded healer. And so she'd always ask us, what is your Chiron? Because that is the clientele that you'll attract. And I would notice that the girls who kind of got into naturopathy to like heal their skin would attract a lot of like acne patients, or women who'd got into it from struggling with fertility would attract those sort of patients as well. And then for me, I get a lot of chronic health clients and people struggling with their mental health. And because that is my wound that I have healed, and now that's me as the wounded healer, like helping others. So it's definitely like that lived experience creates a really deep sense of empathy because you get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Is it called Chiron?
Chiron,
Chiron.
Planet.
Yeah, it makes sense because I've seen that with my line of work over the years. Like I always have attracted who I used to be or parts of myself that I've healed. I think it helps me when I do work with people, because it helps me somewhat understand, like I know everyone has their own experiences and personality, but you can kind of get a base understanding of what's happening, so you can find what angle to support them from as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what age did this actually start for you? Like how old were you?
So I had a random hospitalization around the age of 10, and they never worked out what was wrong with me, but I was never quite right since then. And then I got really sick when I was 13 with glandular fever, and I had to take a year off school. And that's when I first started like looking in my mum's herb garden and like, reading books. But it wasn't until I was 19 that I started studying naturopathy. But I had to stop after a year because I was just too unwell, and had to go on like a big healing journey myself before I was ready to actually study. And then I finished my degree at the end of 2021. So nice. A couple of years ago now. And I've been very driven and passionate ever since.
Yeah, I can tell. And with naturopath, especially when you first started to understand it and study it, was it a bit of like, why is this not more known in the world? Like, what was the first things that came up for you when you first started studying it?
Definitely. So much about nutrition. I think we have a very, I don't know if you remember this from childhood, but Healthy Harold.
Yeah, I remember Healthy Harold. Yeah.
So you kind of get like the basic food pyramid of the foods that you should eat most and then least. And so that's like a good kind of like foundation, but most naturopaths that I speak to, we really tweak that pyramid, and it looks very different. And also understanding like exactly how the foods we eat impact us. But then also, like as preventative medicine, that's when naturopathy really shines, because there's so much you can do with herbs as well that just prevent you from getting to burnout or prevent your immune system getting really depleted. And it saves you money in the long run, because you're not having all these hospital bills or going to your GP heaps and getting sort of these Band-Aid solutions that just give you like a slight reprieve, and then you go back to your old diet and lifestyle habits and get sick again. So it's just sort of, some real getting the basics right about like our diet, our lifestyle, our sleep, sunshine, all these things that are so important to health. And yet they're not talked about enough, I don't think. And also stress, we live in a very stressful modern age, and we're not really taught how to appropriately deal with that.
100%. And it feels like the stress is getting added by the year as well.
It just has a huge effect on the body, like just drives inflammation like crazy, which is, you know, the foundation of so much illness. So yeah.
And like on a personal note, the reason why I'm very keen to understand more about nutrition specifically and naturopathy, even herbs as well, because like growing up through life, you know, playing sports and then going to the gym, doing ice baths, doing saunas, I think I'm doing all the right things, but my nutrition hasn't been stable to the point where it's been beneficial to me. And it made me realize like I can do all these other things, but if I'm not taking care of the thing that actually fuels me, then what's the point? Like, not what's the point? Like, it's still important to do all those other things, but it's like I need to get the baseline fixed first. And I feel like a lot of people may feel like they can relate to that.
Yes, definitely. And the reverse is true as well. Like I see a lot of clients actually, their diets are quite great. They're like putting in so much good stuff into their body, but their lifestyle is shocking. You know, they're just stressed up to their eyeballs and just like not sleeping enough and not exercising enough and just not like relaxing and socializing and experiencing, you know, peace and love and joy, all these like important things to being a human. And so it's all that about that balance. You know, we have to have all these elements that are so integral to wellness. We need to just look after them like a little bit every day, make sure, am I getting fresh air? Have I eaten something healthy? You know, am I hydrated? All those little things just to make sure that our overall experience is balanced and harmonized, because you lean one way and something else has got to give. So, and
especially because like food and even like liquid is basically energy for us for output. It's like what we input is output, and it's like it shows how what you input sometimes can actually make you feel exhausted, make you feel fatigued, even though it's meant to be for fuel. They can actually do the reverse effect of what you want it to do.
So the food is either a medicine or a poison really to us, and it's the dose as well. So we have to be mindful of that.
Yeah, 100%. And going back to the herbs, because I'm interested in this, because you said something about how it helps with immune. So like, what's the best way for someone to educate themselves about herbs and their benefits?
There's so many great books as well. There's a book that I think is really great for us here in Australia. It's by an author, Isabel Shippard, and she wrote this beautiful book, How to Use Herbs in Your Everyday Life. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And it not only tells you like how to grow the herb, but it gives you the history, the folklore, and then the medicinal uses. So getting like a cute little book like that is a great way to start, because also like a lot of it is easy to like grow or just easy to access from your health food store. But herbal tea is a really simple way to just get herbs into your life every day. So I drink all different teas every day, depending on how I'm feeling. So I'll do a little check-in, and then it's like, I should probably, detoxify a little bit because I might have been a bit slack with my diet the last few days. So there's like beautiful herbs that are great for detoxification, like dandelion, which grows everywhere. The root of the dandelion herb is so wonderful for helping our liver detoxify, as well as create bile to help us digest our food. And and there's so many beautiful blends as well in a health food store. You can have a look, and they usually have a name like brain power or detoxification or sleepy time or something like that. So you can have a different herb at every part of the day, and that's a wonderful way to really get it into your life. And in regards to immunity, I've noticed, and rightfully so, a good trend at the moment, popularity of medicinal mushrooms, and they are phenomenal. I have them every day as well, and they're just they make me just feel so much more resilient and adaptable, particularly to like season changes. As it gets colder, sometimes that's when you get more sick, because you maybe not as used to rugging up and you get a little bit too cold and then you get run down. But there's the mushrooms kind of give you a nice buffer to that. So like you got a little bit more resilience, and they just keep your immune system primed and ready. And
So I've seen a lot of people actually supplementing the mushrooms. Like I see it everywhere at the moment. And I think they create and they can support cognitive function as well.
The lion's mane mushroom is phenomenal. There's quite a few studies on it actually, particularly in regards to Alzheimer's. So they've shown that they kind of rate all the different symptoms of Alzheimer's, like in physical abilities, mental capabilities, memory and recall and all these things, and it improved the scores of all those different things after, I think it was like 2 weeks of supplementation. It's really great. It actually helps to reconnect like neural pathways and connections, and protect your membrane around your cells. So yeah, lion's mane is phenomenal like that. And also for us without Alzheimer's, like it's great for memory and recall and concentration. So
and I also heard it's a great thing for you to support with depression as well.
Yes, because any of these herbs that and mushrooms that increase blood flow to the brain, they're going to be bringing nutrients, and they're going to be helping those synapses where the neuro chemicals and transmitters are connecting and pathways are flowing, and you want to make sure that it's all active and sparking correctly, because that can, particularly if you've suffered something like depression for a really long time, those pathways that serotonin travels through they're so inactive that they begin to just die off, and it's these like mushrooms help us keep those pathways alive and well. So it's really great.
Do you use the drops, or do you use that for tea as well, like the herbs?
I actually haven't tried the drops. I know there's a couple of good brands that local ones that have like tinctures. I've used powders. There's also some great brands that have like powders, and I just make a hot drink out of them. They're pretty mild tasting, so don't notice it.
Because I saw on Instagram a mushroom based coffee as well, like caffeine. Do you know much about that, or like caffeine and mushrooms mixed?
I'm not sure. I think it's a way to because like bulletproof coffee has been a big trend as well, where you add like fat into your coffee, and that's like to sustain the energy release.
That when people put like a teaspoon of butter in it?
Butter or ghee or something like that. And then by adding in mushrooms into that, it's just kind of also going to have that like effect on your concentration and focus, and like not having these big spikes and drops in energy. So I think it's probably more along that line, but it's also a little bit trendy. So
it's just doing the research and understanding of what you're actually putting into yourself, because I think we can see so many things on the baseline and see someone else doing it and think it's healthy. But do you think it's more so different things work for different people, or it's more generalized?
No, definitely. A very big thing for naturopaths is that it's treat the whole person, the individual in front of you, because everybody has completely different like life experience and medical health history. And for instance, like I got glandular fever at 13 and it totaled me. I couldn't get out of the bed for at least 6 months. Whereas, another kid in the grade got it and they're fine. They're back at school the next week. And so it's like, why are our bodies reacting so differently? So we really have to ask that why and explore that. And actually, like through studying, I've learned so much about myself on a genetic level. I think that's something that I do think mainstream medical doctors don't talk about enough, is like genetic mutations and variants that like a lot of people have. Like for instance, myself, I have MTHFR gene mutation. So that greatly affects the way that I'm able to metabolize folate and B12. Yep. And so that affects so many things, like detoxification, my neurotransmitter synthesis, how I clear histamine out of my body, all these things that would definitely set me back in being able to deal with something like a virus. So I do think that should be definitely explored more in the mainstream medicine, because it affects about 30% of the population. They have this gene mutation, and now that I know about it, I know how to help those pathways in my body to like work. So now I don't feel affected by it. But there's so many people who have this mutation who aren't taking the right sort of supplements to support their body, and they're just wondering why they're not getting well and they're stuck in these poor health cycles. So individual, definitely. We really want to tailor it to
because with that genetic mutation, like how can someone begin to like identify what's going on within them? Like who should they go see? What should they do?
I know that there are some doctors who do the testing, but it's usually not a priority. Like that's after they've done a lot of different other kind of tests. For instance, if you see a naturopath, it's usually more of a priority for us, because that's a real integral puzzle piece in how we would go forward and treat. The test to check for that is just a little like saliva DNA test. So naturopaths can prescribe that. And I have had a client before that like the doctor has prescribed for them, but they were at the end of the road and they were trying to like figure out what's going on with this what this person's health. So naturopath's probably the best way to go.
Yeah, awesome. And like I was saying that as well, especially with doctors. I'm not saying doctors are bad. I'm just saying that maybe the education and what they're pushed to do is not really as open as it should be. And like, I'm going to speak what I spoke to you about before the podcast. Like when I felt like brain fog, I felt exhausted out of nowhere. And I felt like a bit, I wouldn't say irritable, but I just felt a bit like on edge all the time. So I went to the doctor and spoke to them about it. And he was trying to prescribe me with anxiety and support that. But then I asked him if I could get bloods done first to see if I was deficient in anything. And then it turned out I was deficient in B12. And then I started to supplement B12 and started to implement more foods that have B12 in it. I saw all those things that I was struggling with slowly disappear within about 2 to 4 weeks. And then I was like, I'm glad I didn't, take the first bit of advice and jump on anxiety medication. I'm glad I did further investigation. So, I just wanted to say that.
Absolutely. And also, I really do believe in naturopaths staying in their own lane as well. Like if we need doctors, we need surgeons, like they are lifesavers, and definitely, have so much respect there. But we do have strengths and weaknesses. And so, I do feel like sometimes there can be over-prescribing and under-prescribing with doctors. Whereas naturopaths, because we're very holistic, we'll look at all the different body systems. And, we're spending like an hour and a half with you as opposed to like 10, 15 minutes you get with your GP. So we have that time to really look at your whole body and go, okay, there's a little red flag, there's a little red flag. That makes me think that we should investigate and do this kind of testing. Whereas the doctor's so time short and they're it's very reductionist model. So they're just sort of looking at the criteria and seeing where you fit and going, oh, that's the conclusion they come to very quickly. So a marriage of both is so great. Yeah.
I think that's great. Like, because I think that getting a second opinion on anything is great. Like, no matter what it is, if you've got a health concern, it's like speaking to a doctor and speaking to a naturopath, and then coming to your own conclusion of what you want to do. It's probably one of the best things you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like, I'm a big advocate as well for, like, if it's within your means, like having as many practitioners as possible, like seeing massage therapists and kinesiologists and, combining your somatic, like, release and healing with your nutritional stuff, with CBT and like all of this stuff combined, because we are not just little molecules, like we are also spirit and energy, and we're just so many different factors that we need to be addressed to get to true health. So
and talking about kinesiology, that's awesome, because I had a kinesiologist on this podcast maybe about 2 years ago, and before the podcast she wanted to do a kinesiology session with me so I could understand what it feels like, and then come on the podcast and talk about it. I was mind blown about
how it's so awesome. Yeah. I was like, I didn't understand what it was for years. I was very kind of like, oh, it sounds a bit woo-woo. Like, what are they doing? But I work alongside a kinesiologist now, and she's just explained so much to me, and I'm just like, mesmerized by the process. And I've experienced as well, actually, because I do suffer from allergies a bit. And kinesiology has been the thing that's probably helped me the most with that. Ironically, like I'm so baffled by that. But I think when you have something chronic like allergies or an autoimmune or whatever, you'll inevitably be emotionally affected by that, and it's gonna like store that negative emotion in your body. So kinesiology is so great in like releasing that and identifying it, and I love it.
Especially with movement as well and getting it out of the body. One thing I learned from that was to, if I ever feel moments where I'm anxious, I'm not an anxious person, but I'm human. I have moments where things make me feel anxious. I move my body around, like I just move my arms and like, feel like I'm shifting energy. I know this sounds woo-woo, but for me, that works and it helps.
Absolutely. Because we have like also, just from movement, you're going to be pumping your blood, getting more oxygen to your brain, and like, all these little physiological reactions that we have that we can't disregard.
Create and flow. Before we move on to like the nutrition stuff, like I was like talking about this stuff, I'd like to talk about if you did go on like a spiritual journey at all. Because like if you asked me about 3 years ago about anything to do with spirituality, I was that type of person where
I wouldn't listen to you. Then I had my own experience, and now I'm probably, I'm so woo-woo in that sense now.
I'm very woo-woo, but almost not by choice.
Yeah.
In the fact that, like as a child, I would say that like I was very open, probably too open, like spiritually open. I would see spirits all the time. I would have premonitions and they would come true. And I was kind of like, I freaked out the family a little bit.
Yeah.
And I realized that it was it was a bit scary and it was a little bit like not normal. So I learnt to sort of suppress it. And I do think as well that was kind of part of my mental health problems as well, as being like quite deeply like misunderstood.
Yeah.
And also like I was about 8 and I was diagnosed with PTSD as well. Yep. So I struggled a lot with like mental health from that age. And then in my teen years I was quite depressed as a child, but then it just went really bad as a teenager. And that's why when I was 19 and I started studying naturopathy, and I was like, I really want to learn this, but I just can't, like I'm at rock bottom here. Yeah. I was like, something's got to give. And by a series of like divine intervention, I actually ended up in the Peruvian Amazon. Oh, wow. And I was only meant to be there for 2 weeks on a retreat. I wanted to try a lot of different plant medicines to try and help heal my body and my mind. And then after the 2 weeks there, the shaman who ran the retreat, they said to me, well, I said to them, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. I've got a little bit more work to do here in healing. And they said to me, oh, well, actually, I've noticed that you have a very natural way with the plants and the spirits. Would you like to be my apprentice?
Oh, well.
And so I was like, I feel like this is something that probably only happens once in your life. Yeah. So I should probably say yes. So I ended up living there for 9 months, and that was intensely spiritual and intensely like life-changing. Like it's definitely like pre-jungle Kit and post-jungle Kit. Like it's a very like, it was very transformational, and it really healed my mental health issues and kind of really set the foundation for me to be able to live my life in a much more like free way and pursue things. So when I got back, then I went into studying, and I was, I could do it, and I had enough self-esteem and like just sort of enough self-belief and groundedness to really like follow through on things, because I was pretty much like tapping out before that. Like I was in a really bad place. So that was profound, and I've definitely reconnected back into that childhood openness that I'd sort of suppressed. So now I feel very spiritually connected, and I have very full-on dreams every night, and I always feel like my like ancestors and spirits around me all the time. So I'm very woo, but I'm also like very I do love the science of what I do as well. So I like to have a good balance, because I think living in this culture, we speak the language of science, and I'm really big on connecting with people. So I want to connect with people. So I like to have a scientific language as well to be able to talk to people, but usually it's also one and the same,
Yeah, exactly.
So I like to flick between the two.
Wow, 9 months, that's unbelievable.
Oh yeah, it was a lot.
I'd like to ask a couple of questions about that journey. I'm very interested.
Absolutely.
Like what was some of the key things that you learned there to help you overcome any mental health challenges that you were facing?
Oh, I would say the most profound thing was realizing that I was stronger than I thought. And I say that because we would have ceremonies twice a week, and these were the most intense experiences. I don't think I'll ever experience anything as intense as this. And constantly for about like 8 hours just experiencing death, really, dying over and over again, and realizing that I could face the most terrifying things in the world and death and all of this stuff, and I would always come through, and I could put myself through it again, and I could just keep going. And I realized just how mentally resilient I was. I'd never given myself credit for that, and I'd always felt like there was something inherently flawed with me. And then realizing that like I actually have a lot of gifts and a lot of strength. So it wasn't anything like, there was a lot of people who would have these wham, bow, like bright, colourful, vivid, like experiences that would be really like, they could really point to like, you know, an angel came to me or something. I never had that, but it was just this learning how much I could really rely on myself and fall back on myself and like come through it. It was, yeah, not what I thought I'd get out of it, but it was exactly what I needed. So
do you feel like it was a connection to self you were seeking?
Oh yeah. I think I realized that before I went there that I'd been quite terrified of myself for my whole life, and probably to do with being a little like Wednesday Addams sort of child as well. Like,
do you think that's also with the labels people put on you as well?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. There was a lot put on me, and also like if you have like trauma and depression and anxiety as a child, like kids sense that, and they're like, "There's something spooky about this kid," and so I definitely always felt very isolated, and that there was something wrong with me. So that was kind of like being reflected to me a little bit, and then. I felt like I don't really want to look inside because everybody else seems to be a bit scared of it. And so there's probably some scary monsters in there. But then when I did in the jungle, and I just took the lid off and like I stuck a torch down there and I was like, oh, nothing that scary actually. Wow. And the things that are scary, they just need to be witnessed and then like released, and then like it's fine. That was really, really healing and really enlightening. So now I feel like I know myself so much more, and nothing really phases me anymore. Like when I don't get scared very easily anymore, which is really nice because I feel like I used to be such a scaredy cat.
You feel like up until that moment, and then when you had that experience within that 9 months there, do you feel like that's where you found the most peace as well? Inner peace?
No. Ironically, there was definitely such intense moments of bliss and peace, but it's a really full-on environment to be in, and particularly in an apprentice role, the expectations that are put on you are very like you can't, like the people that are coming there just for like a couple of weeks, they're very much just enjoying themselves and this, but I'm there as like a co-facilitator in a way, so I have to be very switched on, and I have to be really aware of the energies and spirits in the room, and it was a lot. But when I came back to Australia and I really grounded myself, which took a while because I spent a lot of the time like in the astral realm. So once I was like very grounded again, that's when I felt immense peace, because I was like, oh, I the contrast of being in such an intense environment with so much transformation, and then just this serene peace. Like I came back and I just did permaculture for a year, and just gardening every day and being just really living really simply, and I felt just so much gratitude, and it was such a contrast to feeling so much sort of sadness and depression every day, and then to just coming back and just feeling so inspired and and calm and peace, and so that like now my life now is probably the most peaceful it's been.
For sure. Was it like a like when you first made the decision, was it a bit of a culture shock too, like coming from Australia, saying going into, is it like an Amazon?
It wasn't too bad because I'd been to India before, and that was a bit of a culture shock. I kind of threw myself in, like I travelled India by myself when I was 18, which I don't recommend. I was pretty scared a lot of the time. And then so going to the Amazon, I went with a friend initially. And so, it felt kind of like breezy out. The only thing I regret is that I didn't learn more Spanish beforehand, because I didn't expect to stay there that long. And so I was trying as I was there, but a lot of us in the retreat like spoke English. So but it would have been nice to be able to communicate more with the locals. I think that's important if you go to another country, to not just demand that everybody speaks your language.
Because I just went to Europe, and I traveled, like specifically Italy. I had to try and like learn as much as I can on Duolingo. It's like order my coffee and get all my stuff sorted.
That green owl is so demanding.
Literally. That's such an interesting story, and I feel like there could be like a whole nother episode on that, because so much. Like, do you feel like going from there, coming back to Australia, starting and finishing naturopath and getting this type of work, you feel like it really helped you understand like just people on a deeper level?
Definitely.
Because there's so many energies getting shifted in those ceremonies, situations. Like I've been to a few retreats myself, probably not anything as deep as that, but I can tell how much energy is shifted in those rooms, let alone 9 months of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in a way, I don't know if I can say it's exactly similar, but I have sort of watched documentaries before where people have near-death experiences, and when they come out of it, they live their life in a very different way, and it's like you kind of almost, you zoomed out a little bit, you know, and so your ego is dissolved a little bit, and then so when you kind of come back into your body and you're living your human life, things that used to feel so stressful or overwhelming, or, you know, the relationships you have with people like are always so like intense, and like, but when you've had those experiences, it's kind of like you just see how connected everything is, and you have that real like you can kind of see why people behave the way they do, and you have compassion for it rather than putting up a wall or, you know, othering people. It's very much like, you have that zoomed out lens that's much more of a compassionate and one view of everything. So,
It's awesome, because I relate with that, because I had a somewhat near-death experience. I've had a couple actually in these retreats, but then I haven't had any since, like for a while, so that's good. It's been more peaceful and enjoyable. But the first few I went to, there must have been a lot of things I had to shift. And one of the first ones I remember was like I went through this massive like deep rabbit hole, and at the end of it, there was two parts of me. So there was me, who I am now, standing on the edge of a cliff holding the rope. And at the hanging over the edge was the old me, or another part of me holding on to the rope, and he's begging me to pull him up. And I saw that as me trying to keep my unhealed self in my life and trying to keep my past self and afraid to let that go. And then in that moment, I remember I just dropped the rope. And then when I came out of that experience, I remember for the next 3 months, I was just, I wouldn't say disassociated, but I just felt like I was just like walking on air, like 3 months. Like I just felt like completely strange. And then after that 3 months, I went to another event, did another breath work, sound bowling. It was like a Tibetan healing one. And I came out of it and I felt fine. It was like me floating through space and like seeing things from a different perspective. And then about an hour after I got out of it, I felt fine. And I started sweating. I felt nauseous, and I started purging and vomiting. Ended up in hospital because I was just so dehydrated. Then after that, that was like me connecting back into my body. And ever since then, like life has just been great. And the reason I mention that is because I know when we go into the realm of spirituality, but then we have to somehow function in real life too, or what real life is. Like, how do you find the balance of being connected to yourself, but also still being in a mode where you have to function in like the modern world?
Yeah, it's really hard, and I'm still trying to get that balance for sure, because I can sometimes, well, definitely that year I swung way hard one way, and then when I was studying naturopathy, I was definitely swung the other way, like just being so head and book academic all the time. But I think for me, it's finding sort of the things that do make me feel connected to it. So like nature is my number one. Like nature is like church for me. So that's where I feel like I can really quickly and really easily sink in to myself, and then also expand my awareness to the beautiful environment around me and animals and spirits and things like that. And I also love to observe the seasons and moon cycles as well, and do like little sort of personal like ceremonies like that, and also like maybe meet up with a few other like pagans or whatever and do things like that. That for me is a way to like really do it. But I feel like I know like I'll get to this point where I'm like, I'll catch myself, maybe I'll be scrolling on my phone and I'm like, I feel so like just like a robot right now and I need to do something about this. And so having dogs is great because they like make you get outside.
They make you present.
Exactly. So I'll go for a walk with her, and it's some just simple things like that. But I make sure I do it like, if not every day, every second day, because otherwise I start to not feel like myself.
Because I saw you post on your Instagram about earthing, so like connecting to the earth, and like something I relate to. Like when I'm out in nature, I just feel so connected. Like in the bush, but for me, it's more so like on the beach. Like if I'm on sand and ocean, I just feel like, I feel like I just zone out from the world and I just connect to myself. Is it one or the other for you, or is it just anywhere you go?
Anywhere nature. Like I noticed that as well, that like sometimes I'm not a great tourist, like when I've traveled to other countries, because they're like, I want to show you this beautiful ancient cathedral, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that's amazing, but I really want to go check out those mountains. Like I just need to, like I just love the countryside and being immersed in it. And I feel like, just speaking of being a bit woo-woo, like I feel like often like the land, you know, like the rocks and the soil, like they hold so much memory, and I love to just sit and like feel that, and like I feel like I'm part of that story. So anywhere, and I love, and in regards to earthing, like when you're in the ocean or you've got your bare feet on soil or sand, you're getting those negative ions coming into your body. So if I've been wearing shoes all day and I've been at the computer, I'm going to be getting washed in like positive ions, which make you feel frazzled and like disconnected. And so that's why like often when people talk about that first dive under the waves, like you just feel like it washes off, because it's literally those negative ions just bathing you and like neutralizing those positive ions you've collected through being a little tech robot in front of the screen. So anything like that I'll just indulge in. I was keen to ask that question, because I talked about on another podcast like balancing the spiritual and like the materialistic world, and trying to find the one with the other. I feel like no matter what, we're always gonna have moments where we pull into one more than the other, but then it's just having that reminder to bring us back to base. And then you know, and also like being of service to others, that makes me feel very connected to like my higher purpose and like spiritual side. And I feel very fortunate that that is my line of work, so I can kind of feel like I can tap into that. And sometimes I'll catch myself, maybe I'm feeling a bit stressed out at work because I've got a lot of paperwork to do, or like this is a really complex case and I really want to do well, and I start putting that pressure, and then I just take a moment and I connect back to that purpose of that, like, well, I'm just here to be like, to almost in a way remove the responsibility on me and my ego, and I'm like, I'm here to just be a channel for healing, and like to allow this person's like health journey to progress, and like stop being so like focused in the stress and anxiety and the worry, and just like I'm always giving 100%, I'm always doing the best to my best of my abilities, and like I'll just allow myself to be a part of this greater picture and greater story, and play my part as connected as I can.
I relate with that, because I honestly feel my best when I am in service to others, or I'm doing something bigger than myself. You know, like I don't do that, and I don't disregard myself in that saying, but when I am in service to others, or when I am helping people or supporting people in any regard, like I feel very purposeful, very fulfilled as well. And that's kind of hard for me to even feel slightly depressed when I am in service to others, because it's just, you feed off their energy as well and their feedback. And when you start seeing people get results, like it just lights you up too.
Yes, absolutely. It's I do believe it's such an important part of our biology. Like I think we're meant to be in community and helping each other and growing and evolving together. And so I think that's why there are such high levels of depression and anxiety today, because we are so disconnected, and our jobs can be very isolating. You know, these desk jobs where people are in these little cubicles, they can't even see each other. Like, it's not very natural and not great for the human soul.
Because especially for like not even just thousands but millions of years, or however long humans have been around for, like we've always been in communities, and we've always done things that help other people survive. Like our whole purpose for so long is like, me and a bunch of other men will go and gather food, we'll go and hunt, females do their role, and it's just like for thousands of years, like we've all been doing this to support each other to survive. And then like the last couple of years, because of some circumstances that happened, like it's become very isolated, it's pushed people away. And I think we need to get back into the connection of human and get people in communities again. And I feel like it's an important part, and it's just finding a way to bring this back into the world, because I feel like it's not only going to increase just mental health, it's also going to help the next generation when they grow up to be more healthy.
Because like that's also something that I really incorporate into my naturopathic lens, is that like I can do all this work to make me better and the individual better, but we don't have true health until our like community and our society and our world is healthy, you know, like we're all a functioning healthy ecosystem. And so I'm also a big environmentalist as well and activist, because I see how much that affects us as humans as well, and how we affect the environment. So yeah, I think harmony everywhere is really important.
Yes, agreed. But I'd like to switch over to the all the nutritional side of things, and the the deficiencies that we go through as well. And I think I'd like to start with, I think a good starting point might be the gut-brain axis. So I believe it's called the enteric nervous system. That's correct? Yeah. So
enteric?
Enteric,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
it. I pronounced it wrong.
Yeah.
Sometimes I pronounce things wrong and then just blame me English accents. So could you talk to us about what that is and how that operates?
Yeah, sure. So we have, as we know, neurons in our brain, but we also have some in our gut. And then we have a vagus nerve that connects the gut and the brain together. So we are getting constant signaling from our gut to our brain and our brain to our gut. And that's also plays a part in having a gut feeling about things, because we do have neurons there and we are perceiving information through our gut as well, which is crazy to think about. So that's sometimes why, because we have our brain is so we have our conscious brain, our frontal brain is sometimes overrides our instinct, but you can't override your gut, because that's different to our brain. So sometimes you have that gut feeling and you're I should have listened to it, because your brain can override it. But in relation to health, we can be greatly affected by our our stress can really affect our gut, because it's that communication's going on, and that has an effect in your microbial balance. But then the other way as well, so you might notice if you eat something that's off and you start to feel nauseous, it can also make you feel really anxious or depressed. When you feel nauseous, you can get that real doom feeling, something's really wrong.
Or brain fog.
Yeah, brain fog is a huge one. So yeah, they're connected by this link and this gut-brain axis, and it's very important to address both, because I actually have a few clients where they have such bad gut issues, and I've been certain in my head, they probably got this or that, and I've run a test. They don't have anything apart from maybe a little bit of a deficiency in some good bacteria, and it's just the stress. Their stress is so strong that it's just having these such huge impacts on their gut. And I'm there thinking, they've got parasites, the level of gut issues that they've got going on, but there's none.
Yeah.
And then the other way as well, sometimes people are I'm usually such a calm person. I'm usually, I don't have any stress or anxiety, but now I can't sleep. Now I'm anxious all the time. And I'll run a gut test and they've got parasites, even though they might not have gastrointestinal symptoms that are quite severe. They've got, a bacterial overgrowth or parasites, and it's just really affecting their brain. So we really can't undermine that connection. So, plays such a huge part in our health.
Yeah, because when I first found out that there is an axis that links straight to the brain, I always heard that, food can impact you. But when I first started studying mental health and I realized that a lot of it is linked to what we digest and what we eat, I was just I was mind blown. I was it makes sense. Just to know the more scientific side of it.
Definitely. Yeah. And also our blood sugar regulation. So we are eating way more sugar than we ever have in history. And this refined sugar spikes our blood glucose really quickly. And there's been some studies to show that when you're in a hyperglycemic state, so you your blood is saturated, oversaturated with sugar, it has a numbing effect on the brain. It actually shuts down a part of the emotional sector of the brain. So that's why we can get emotional eating in a way, because you are suffering emotionally and you just want to numb it. And so the body kind of knows that if I just wolf a whole chocolate bar down, I'll numb that part of my brain a bit. So there's what we eat can have actually such a quick impact on our physiology. And that's also something that I don't think is talked enough about.
Yeah, 100%, because most of the time, majority of the time where I'm you know what, let's just grab dessert.
Yeah.
And after I eat the dessert, I'm I shouldn't have ate that. Yeah. I feel horrible, and I'm it's just connecting that, knowing what the feeling is it gives you after to what you feel before. Yeah. And do you truly want to feel those side effects that come from it? It may feel good in the moment, chewing it, because it's probably giving you dopamine and all these other things as you're eating it. But the negative effects that come from it is like quite dramatic.
Yes, and it requires a lot of like awareness and discipline as well. Like I think a lot of time we're driven by these very base instincts, and we live such busy lives that we don't have this time to reflect. Or if you have like significant trauma, you don't really like those like pathways in your brain are so ingrained that you can't, like, it takes a lot of like therapy and work to be able to like sort of rewire that. So that's something that I do feel like I wish there was more compassion against it. Particularly sometimes I notice in the gym world as well that there's like this fat phobia and there's this judgment on people's like eating behavior. But I'm also like, it is more than just like, you know, a choice, you know, and I think we think that we can sometimes override these things, but I really believe in like community help and support and healing, and having this like judgment mindset that somebody is like somehow less worthy because they're not able to make these right choices is just really like hard, because there's like financial barriers. Like, it's so cheap to eat at McDonald's. Like, it is so cheap. And so if you're like a single mom, you've got all these kids to feed and you're living like off just like really like Centrelink's not great. And you know, the cost of living at the moment, like of course that's a really quick way to like feed your family. And then like you add in like insecure housing and trauma and all this stuff. Like, it's so hard to make choices when you're in fight, flight mode and survival mode. So it's hard because I feel like there should be more of a societal responsibility as well, like, or at least from a government level in helping people have access to healthy food, because that's just, such a huge barrier. But if you do have like the space and the means in your life, it is so awesome to like start to notice these things and to like do little things every day to just help you make better choices and be supported in that. So
I agree with you with the non-judgment aspect, because I do feel like it has to be a collective informative thing, and to support each other get through that, because I think a lot of it can be conditioning too. Like, I knew me growing up, like I was not fed anything healthy as a kid. Like, a lot of pies, a lot of pizzas, like that was just the conditioning growing up. Like, now I'm 25 and I'm only now just like starting to I am rewiring what I eat, what I consume, but it is a bloody process within itself.
Absolutely. And you know, also like our taste buds get like programmed to like certain things. Like myself, I grew up vegetarian, and I now like I need to eat meat, I've realized, for my health. And I struggle so much with taste and texture. Like, there's pretty much only two types of meat that I can really get down with. And but I know how like good these other foods could be for me. But it's like it's so much to overcome like these things in adulthood. So that's really like where parents can, you know, do little things every day to kind of help the future of their children to not be such fussy eaters or have like, you know, go-to foods that perhaps aren't the best.
That's so funny, because I'm the same but opposite. So like, I love meat and stuff, but growing up, like, my sister will be listening to this and she'll laugh, but I couldn't eat like, and I could, but I chose not to eat like any vegetables or fruits. It's like, even my sister, if she would dice up onion in the tiniest bit, I still wouldn't eat it. But then like now, like, onion's one of my favorite things. Like, how my taste buds changed over time. Now I like majority of fruits and veggies, but I'm a big texture person too.
Yes, texture.
So I can't eat apples. I don't know why, but
there's always something.
But with parents, is there anything that parents can do, like if they are on the budget, how they can implement it somehow to get more nutritional food in?
I think that there are definitely some, like, if you try and do your shopping, you know, on the outside aisles, because the inside is where all of that sort of processed food is. So it's all like your veggies, and then it goes around to your meats and your dairies. So trying to just budget with those whole foods, which it is hard, because those are foods that need to be prepared, and I really empathize, like, if parents are time poor, that it's hard to, like, you know, have the time to even like cook like nutritious meals, and but as much as possible to like aim for whole foods and preparing food, and like just a little less every week, you know, eating out and like more at home meals. That's really good. And keeping your eyes on the specials, because that's what I do. Like, I would love to eat like blueberries every day, but they're so expensive. So when I see them on special, I'll grab some, and like just trying to make it like within your budget, and avoiding particularly just the things that are like, we know that are just, there's absolutely no nutrients in them. Like I loved them, and my mum never bought them for me, which I'm glad, but like LCM bars, kids would come with them, and roll-ups, and like they are so tasty, but they're just lollies. Like there's absolutely nothing there. So maybe going more for like something with a little bit of nutrition in it, because those things will just send your kids off the walls. All those like colors and flavors, and
that's like, even with myself, like I grew up loving cereal, but if I have cereal now, like my energy's gone for about 4 hours. Like, so for me personally, like I don't eat breakfast.
Yes.
So I feel best like when I fast. So usually I do like 16, 8,
oh, wow, that's a lot.
80% of the time.
Okay.
And I feel unreal. But I feel like if I eat, it's probably because I'm eating the wrong breakfast. Like now thinking about it, that's why I feel bad.
Well, I find it so odd that cereal ever became a breakfast food, because there's nothing of substance to it. Like it's just sugar and carbs and absolutely no protein or good fat or anything. So I think that's what we need is a reverse. Less carbs for breakfast and more protein and fats to like sustain us for a big day ahead. So,
that's true, because when I have bacon, because I have like on the weekends I have breakfast, and it's usually like bacon and eggs, and I feel good. Is that linked to that?
Because you've got the protein and the fat there to like really sustain you. I'm very big on protein in general, which again is so opposite as growing up as vegetarian and a vegan, because I was like primarily a carb based sort of diet, but I've experienced just how good it's been for my mental health, because amino acids are the basis of your neurotransmitters, and so I'm just so much more of a grounded person, and I can think straight, and I have less mood swings and all that now that I've incorporated like a really high protein diet, and I think also, protein really helps to stabilize your blood sugar. And I think I never got tested, but I was probably a little bit hyperglycemic, which greatly affects your mental health, because if your blood sugar drops, a natural response to that is for your body to boost your cortisol levels. And that causes you to go into a bit of a fight flight. So eating protein regularly really helps to keep that in check, and also make you feel like less mood swings. And I think it's really important, particularly for people who have like menstrual cycles, because it's like if you're constantly like under eating and you've got these cortisol spikes, that also has a really huge impact on your sex hormones and how well you have a cycle. So I do feel like men can probably get away with like fasting a bit more than women, because it's very like has such a huge impact on our sex hormones, and it has detrimental effects, and you get painful periods and infertility and all of this stuff. So
that makes sense, because I know a lady, she works in nutrition, there's like a PT as well, but she works with women only, and she's completely against fasting. So that just kind of makes me understand why.
Because also like the studies that have been done on intermittent fasting and they are great, because it shows like it stimulates like insulin like growth factor and all these like longevity kind of hormones in the body, but they've all been done on men, and there was one that was done on women, but they were postmenopausal, so they weren't in their reproductive years, and so the hormones are a bit different as well. I'm not pro fasting for women, because it's very it's just too hard. Your body's already doing so much every day, and every day is different when you have a menstrual cycle, because it's like your energies in a completely different part of, like, depending where you are in the month, sorry. So I think it's makes just life so much harder.
What does a day of eating look like for you?
For me?
So
now that I've recently, like last couple of months ago, for the first time in my life started going to the gym. You can probably tell. And I'm really trying to be more mindful about the protein. And so I try to get a minimum of 30 grams every meal. And I don't want to focus too much on macros and all that, because micronutrients are just as important. But so I have, my go-to is usually like eggs for breakfast, because they're such an easy source of protein and fats, and like they really sustain you. But I like boost it even more. Like I'll put cottage cheese with it and like make it really protein dense. And then lunch is probably my biggest meal of the day. I will have some sort of like meat and then just vegetables. I try not to have too many carbs in the day because otherwise I want to nap. And then dinner's much the same. So yeah, I'm trying to like keep as well, like, because I'm eating more meat than I have in my life, like to make sure that I'm eating a lot of alkalizing foods as well, because sometimes if you're not eating like organs and bone broth, like just the protein, like the muscle cuts can be a bit like acidic and inflaming in the body. So yeah, lots of green vegetables and things like that. Yeah, really alkalizing, help to combat that.
Nice. Where do you get your like veggies from? Do you go to a fruit barn or Woolies? Like, what's your preference?
There are so many good local farmers markets, but I'm not always able to make it to them. But if I can, that's my priority. But I'll go anywhere really. And I try to do more organic where it's possible, but again, like cost of living, it's a bit crazy. But like where I live in Moolumbar, I reckon I'm probably a bit biased, but I think we've got the best farmers market. Like the local farmers are just the tastiest produce. So that's my preference, because it's just I can taste the difference as well. Like it's really, really nice.
Even just like this is like random, but when I went to Vanuatu, they had like banana trees there. I had a banana over there, and it was the best banana I've ever had in my life.
That's right. Yeah, I remember in Peru the mangoes were off the chain, and ones that I'd never seen before, varieties, like some that were like the size of my fist, and then some that were the size of my head. Like they were just like so good.
Like because I've seen some people say that like, no, you can get the frozen veggies, they can kind of be stripped of nutrients. Do you know much about frozen vegetables?
I know that like snap frozen is okay, which I don't know if all of them are, but that's usually that's a good way of preserving it, because they drop them to these like really cold temperatures straight away, and it kind of locks in the nutrients. But just like a standard sort of like freezer is not that great, but I still think any vegetables are better than none. So they're just going to give, like, even if there's no nutrients in it, it's going to give you great like prebiotic fiber and just fiber in general to like help clear out your colon and give you water, and they're great. They're great.
And like for someone like me, and I think parents may relate to this, or even people like me who are very like I struggle with texture, especially with fruits. So like I want to get me fruits in, but usually I blend them with water.
Like a smoothie?
Yeah, like a smoothie. Yeah. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Cool.
Anywhere you can get it in.
Cool.
There is this oh gosh, I'm gonna butcher it. What is it? Eat your drink and drink your food. Basically, I've ruined that. But basically, it's like if you have a smoothie, like kind of chew it so that you get saliva in there, and that'll help you digest it. And then if you have food, chew it to the point where it's pretty much a liquid, and that'll help you digest it, like optimizing digestion. And yeah, that's another thing that's really important. Like you can put in so much good food, but if your digestive enzymes are just not pumping, like you're not going to break it down, and you're not going to get the nutrients out of it. And that's really common in today. Because stress really shuts down the digestive symptoms. So I would say most people who are adults have not enough like stomach acid or bile or like juices from their like pancreas and all of this stuff that helps them break down the food. Like there's not enough. And so we get bloating, we get constipation, get diarrhea, because the body's just not being able to like get the nutrients out and digest it efficiently. And then we're all tired.
What's some things we can do to increase the digestive to help that?
So a great one for the stomach acid, and a good sign is if you've got low stomach acid is that like if you feel really heavy and tired after eating meat, or if you have like a low appetite in the morning. So lemon juice in a glass of water or apple cider vinegar in a glass of water will help stimulate the stomach acid, and that'll help you break down the proteins in particular. And then to help with digesting fats, you want bitter foods. So the bitter is really going to stimulate that bile production, and it is good to taste it, which we don't like eating. We've really lost our taste for the bitter food, but eating something bitter before a meal is really, really great. And many cultures like still have it. They'll have like little shot of bitters before or after a meal. I remember when I went to India, there was always these fennel seeds coated in like some sort of sweetness, and like you'd eat that after a meal, and because like fennel is really aromatic, like it helps you digest food. And we need to kind of bring back those things into our Western culture to really help us digest our food. So yeah, bitter and sour are really great for
Awesome,
digestive enzymes.
It's awesome that you said lemon and water. I'm not sure if you know what it's like when you mix lemons, Himalayan salt and water.
Yeah.
Because I used to do that in the mornings. I did that when I was, I just read it in the book, to be honest. I started doing it, but I did feel benefits from it.
Definitely, it's so good for you. And I do like, a bit of salt like in water as well. Sometimes I feel like people don't have enough electrolytes. So they'll be, if I have a client and they say, oh, I drink like 3 liters a day, but they still are showing signs of like dehydration, it's probably because they've got electrolyte imbalance. So just sometimes like a little pinch of like Celtic sea salt is in their water will help them retain it more, and it'll get into the cells and it'll help their organs. And
that's good, because I feel like there's a big misconception about salt.
Oh yeah, big one. Yeah, we're so anti-salt, and I am anti-iodized table salt, which is kind of like the common one that we see around, because the form of iodine they put in there isn't so great for us, and it's just like too refined and it's not great. But like Celtic sea salt, Himalayan sea salt, they're full of micro like minerals and like trace minerals, that's what I'm looking for, and they're it's really good for our body.
Is it like with pepper as well, is there a certain type of pepper, or is it just any kind of fine?
I mean, I reckon it's best if you get the whole peppercorns and then grind it fresh, because it'll have more flavor, and then there'll be like a little bit more of the oils in it. They won't have evaporated, so you'll get more fragrance, and it'll have more of a warming effect in the body.
Well, so interesting. And like, before we get into the inflammatory stuff, I know you mentioned before about parasites. I feel like I've seen, like, I know people up in the Sunshine Coast called Corrective Culture. They support people with like parasite detox. Like, what's the importance of understanding if we have parasites basically in us?
Well, you can probably, there are some parasites that you could probably have your whole life and not know, and you'd be fine. And then there are some that are pretty gnarly, and you need to know. You need to get them out, but you'll probably know they'll cause like side effects. And there are some like things like, I can't think of a specific parasite, but for instance, like with candida, like thrush and that, we all have candida in us, and it's fine, but we just don't want an overgrowth because that'll give us issues. And so we have evolved alongside certain microbes, and I know that there are some parasites, but I just can't think of them, that are like common and they're fine. H. pylori in the gut, that can have really detrimental effects on people, and then other people absolutely no effect, doesn't affect them. They wouldn't know that they have it unless they got tested for it. And that's a large percentage of the population that has H. pylori, and they're chilling. But then some have like just such horrible reactions to it. So I would say if you are having symptoms that are obvious, like gastrointestinal things, definitely get tested. But there are symptoms that are less obvious. So you might have like your bowels aren't affected too much or anything like that, not too much bloating, but you are experiencing just uncharacteristic like fatigue, brain fog, sore joints, things like that. They can be caused by parasites as well, because they release toxins into your body, and that gets absorbed in your bloodstream, and it circulates to your brain and your joints, and you just it can make you feel really rubbish. And so I would consider definitely like getting them out. And it can be also sometimes like the root cause of things that people wouldn't even consider. Like I know people who have chronic skin issues like psoriasis or eczema, and it's because of a parasite. Once that's gone, it's cleared up, and that's not a common cause for it, but it can can definitely be something that contributes. So testing is good. The tests that doctors do don't cover a lot of them. They cover some really important ones that you definitely want to be aware of, but there are more complete tests that we can do as naturopaths as well that will check out like all the other lesser known ones. And there's actually quite a few, at least down where I am, particularly in the Northern Rivers. Like I can see a lot of clients who don't realise, and they don't have education around it, and they move onto a beautiful property in the bush, and they have tank water, and they're not filtering it, and they're drinking it, and you can get like bat droppings in there, or like creatures just carry things. And so I see heaps of like particularly like blastocystitis, giardia, and dientamoeba. These are like the main sort of infections that I see, and from people drinking tank water. And so that's you just got to be really mindful mostly of like water sources, and always washing your hands, particularly if you use a public toilet, or if you go to like, this might seem like a random one, but like I feel like this might be a cause for some clients because they can't think of what it is, but like they go to like a communal yoga class,
Yeah.
and like the mats aren't cleaned and stuff. So like people are sweating on that, and like body juice is not good.
Yeah.
So yeah, just try to like be mindful of hygiene in public places, because that's also how you can contract some of these like gnarly ones as well. So yeah, water is the big one though.
Yeah.
Filter your water.
Water, yeah. For water, for me, is probably the first start in terms like not including gym and all that stuff. Like the first part about like internal health I started to focus on was water, because as soon as I stopped drinking tap water, like I felt so much better. Like actually drinking filtered water.
Yeah.
But I've seen some people doing, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, but Kangen water.
Oh, Kangen.
Kangen water. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Kangen. I know that it's to do with the pH. The machine makes it like you can choose what pH it is. But I don't know though how well it filters out heavy metals. Like I haven't looked into that part of it, because for me that's the sort of the main thing is getting out, because like you can smell it sometimes if you go into the city, especially like the chlorine smell that like when you turn on tap, it's like, oh, not good. It doesn't taste great either. So getting out those kind of like chemicals and metals is priority. I really love, I've got a Zazen filter. It's just like a benchtop one, and so it filters out all of those chemicals, and then it's when the water goes through the filter, it sits in a base that has all these rocks in it, and they put minerals back into the water. So that one's really great. I noticed when I started drinking that, I had like my nails felt a bit stronger. So yeah, all those good minerals helps. Yeah.
And I'm not sure, do you know who Robert Kennedy Jr. is?
Yes.
Yeah, so I heard him talking about, I think he's done a lot of research on metals, especially in fish as well. Do you know too much about that, and like where do you get your fish source from to make sure it's not heavy metal?
I should be more strict on that for sure, because I do take a cod liver oil every day, and I get it from the brand Nordic Naturals, because they do heavy metal testing. So that's like I make sure that, because I'm having that every day, that I'm onto that. But I know there are some brands that do tin fish that are like tested as well, but they're expensive, and I don't have the budget for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know definitely avoid the Tasmanian salmon, which is unfortunate because it'd be nice to have local, but they are farmed and they're just pumped with antibiotics. But in general, like even if you get like wild caught fish, there's just toxins in our ocean now, microplastics. There's a lot of mercury in some parts of the water, and they're gonna just be absorbing that, the poor things. So it's hard to be pure. Yeah. But there are things that we can do to detoxify our bodies of these things if they're starting to accumulate. And yeah, that you can see a lot of like that affects a lot of things. Like more studies is coming out around that, like particularly with like things like MS. They're noticing that in some patients that is kind of like what is switching on the disease is having
multiple sclerosis.
Yeah. Having high like levels of mercury and things like that can like really affect conditions like that. And then also behavioural things in children. Sometimes they might have too many like too much heavy metal exposure. So there are definitely awesome things that we can do to bind up those metals in the bloodstream, and then get them out of the body. Yeah,
I've heard a lot of different things about heavy metals in kids, especially. It can especially with like mental health issues or disorders. It can cause things like autism and a lot of different things, but it's not something I am educated on. It's just repeating information.
Definitely, and like the research is still kind of emerging and like new. So it is very controversial as well, I think, as well, because we should note that there is absolutely nothing wrong with being autistic, but there are certain like symptoms that come with that can be exacerbated by like a diet and toxins and that just make it harder to like live as an autistic person. So you're probably going to be born neurodivergent, and like that's who you are, but there are things that in your diet and lifestyle that just make certain aspects worse, and they don't have to. It can help with diet and nutrition and herbal medicine.
And especially like coming on to inflammation now, like inflammatory foods, like do you want to just give us a basis of what happens when we, like when our body becomes inflamed or brain inflammation?
Yeah, so there are many ways that can happen. So like a big one that I think many people are experiencing is that a lot of our food that we eat has a not so great effect on our gut lining, and it causes gut permeability, also known as leaky gut. Yep. And when that happens, like these little tiny junctions open up, and food particles can pass through into the bloodstream, and that's absolutely not meant to happen. They're meant to just be selective things taken across into the bloodstream, so nutrients. So when actual like matter is going in there, it's gonna send off alarms in the body and cause like brain fog and concentration issues, and then of course mood. And then it can really affect joints. Like there is a lot of research emerging as well with rheumatoid arthritis and gut permeability, and particularly having that sort of like rheumatoid arthritis has this very like picture of mirroring. So it's like both elbows, both knees, and it's like this systemic inflammation. Psoriasis is a big one as well. So the body's going like, oh, freak out, and its signaling gets like confused and starts reacting with the skin proteins, and then they get these lesions. And other than leaky gut, also having really refined foods or really refined sugar can create an environment that feeds the bad bacteria. So a lot of like opportunistic bacteria loves to like feed on just like cane sugar and things like that, and they'll overgrow and they'll outgrow the good bacteria in our gut, and so then we start getting heaps of bloating and like constipation and issues like that, and diarrhea, and that again through the enteric nervous system, through that gut-brain axis, it's going to affect how you feel, really cause a lot of like stress in the brain, and affect your mood greatly. Like it's hard to just like just how many people go to work really bloated and from their like poor gut health, and they're just having to like sit at their office job and just feel crap all day. Like it's horrible. And so there's a few different ways that like our diet and our like physiology gets affected by these inflammatory foods and causes inflammation in the body.
Especially talking about sugar there too, because there was a study done that I seen you sent, and it was insulin deficiency is essential to the cognitive decline of Alzheimer's disease too.
Yeah, that's some really awesome research that's emerged in the last few years about how they're now starting to call Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. So basically like our brain needs so much glucose to function. But then when you kind of have been in an inflamed and hyperglycemic state for so long, your insulin receptors start to like give out, particularly like in the brain, and so your brain doesn't uptake the glucose anymore, and that's so important for everything, but particularly for like memory and recall and things like that we see decline a lot in Alzheimer's, and so balancing our blood sugar is really important for preventing the development of Alzheimer's in old age. That's actually why I decided to go to the gym, because having muscle is a really great storage place for glucose. So if you've got lots of like glucose circulating in the blood, you have muscle, your muscles will uptake it, particularly if you're using them. So that like having muscle is a wonderful preventative for like Alzheimer's as well, and brain degeneration and all of that. So that I listened to a podcast with Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. She's an American doctor who's she's in geriatric care, and she's done a lot of this like research. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try and get some muscle.
I'm sticking to the gym then.
It's definitely great for your long-term health, and also just preventing like keeping your mobility as long as possible into your old age. Like it's so, it'd be so great to have good muscle tone. So if you fall, you're not going to break your hip as easily, and you'll be able to pump, use your muscles and pump blood to your brain, and just feel more happy and engaged with life. So
I was in the sauna last week, and some older fella was in there with me. I think he's about late 70s, but he looked like super healthy. And I asked him, I was like, because I was speaking about yoga to my friend and he mentioned something about yoga, and I asked him, and I was like, how do you stay, like, what's kept you healthy for all these years? He said, don't stop moving. He goes, the day you stop moving, you're going to decline. So he's like, the one thing he's done since his late teens is just yoga, gym, walking, and just keep his body functioning.
It's so important. And it's been like the biggest obstacle for me because I suffered with chronic fatigue for so long, and I just never exercised. Never in childhood. I was always awkward and like got picked last in sports and all this stuff. Like just hated physical exercise and just didn't engage in any. And was way too tired as well, just my whole life, up until a couple of years ago. And I just feel that as well, just how wonderful that has been for my mental health as well. Like, well, one, having enough energy to function, but two, like the endorphins you get from exercise and moving your lymphatic system and your blood, and like, yeah, it's so great.
Yeah, the amount of times I've like finished the work day, felt tired, don't want to do anything, force myself to the gym, and I feel great. Like after, I'm like, I'm so glad I went.
I know. I kind of hate that that's true, because like you kind of, some days it's just like it's like I really don't want to go, and you just, but then you go and you're like, damn, it felt so good. Why does it have to be like that? But it's also wonderful for mental discipline.
Yeah, exactly. Building resilience and willpower. Yeah,
for sure.
Before we move on from sugars, like I know there is a lot of talk about like good sugars and bad sugar. Like, what is an example of what food source is a good sugar?
So I there's sort of two things, like sugar that comes with like nutrients. So like we know that like just table sugar is just nothing but like sugar. But then, for instance, like maple syrup has some minerals with it. It's still very high GI, so you don't want to have heaps of maple syrup, just a tiny bit. But it's it's gonna be a little bit of a better sugar than just table sugar. And then that's the other point, is the glycemic index. So you want to go for more low GI, because the low GI foods are going to spike your blood sugar less. So that's in like a lot of your sort of fruits and vegetables. Some fruits are still very high GI, and they're fine to have like in moderation as well. Another way to kind of hack it as well is like to have a good protein source before you go for something sweet. So I'm not like completely adverse to dessert. I've got a big sweet tooth, but I like to do it like after I've eaten protein, because I just don't feel that like zing and then crash as much. So it's like more sustained.
So the protein helps absorb it?
Yeah, it helps with reducing that spike happening. So the sugar getting in the danger zone, essentially. So
notes taken. If I ever want dessert, I'm having the protein dinner.
Have a good protein-rich dinner first. Yeah.
How about honey as well? Because I know some people say put honey in tea as a replacement for sugar.
I definitely think it's better than sugar. It's it's still quite high GI, but again, like particularly if you're having raw local honey, that's got a lot more nutrients. And also I listened to this talk with a beekeeper, and this blew my mind, and I haven't fact checked it, and I don't want to because I just think it's awesome. But he was saying that the bees, they don't have an immune system, but the flowers, because they have this symbiotic relationship with the bees, the flowers will want the bees to stay alive and stay healthy. So the bees kind of get all this information from the environment, and then they put that into their pollen. And so then the bees, when they eat the pollen and take it and turn it into honey, they're kept strong from their local environment. And then this is the part, I'm not sure that's true, but he was saying that the bees have identified that the beekeepers are part of their life and their survival, and so they make their honey also to the humans like immune system. So like but also, whether that's true or not, just having local honey, you're gonna be having pollens of the local area, and that's gonna be great for your immune system as well, and hopefully help prime it in regards to like allergy season and when they're all getting released, so you don't have such a reaction. I love like raw honey. I think it's really good, but of course in moderation.
I was just about to say, like anything in life, moderation.
Exactly.
Next one is, I'm keen to talk about this because I see this is a massive trend at the moment, is seed oils. Like it's like, but last year I had never heard of seed oils before, and then within the last 9 months it feels like it's all over my algorithm. Could you tell us more about seed oils and what's going on with that?
And there's a lot of like confusion, and I have this conversation with my mum about once a week because she's so confused about it because of the marketing that exists, right? So seed oils are good for your health, right? But not in the way we're eating them. So if you get a bunch of flax seeds, just whole raw, and you grind them up, they're going to release oil, and having that oil straight away, really good for you. It's high in omega-3s and GLA and all these things that are really like good for your body, your hormones, your brain. But these oils are very, very sensitive to oxygen and heat. So as soon as they're sort of bottled and put in clear containers and in the sun and like transported around, they start to go rancid, they start to oxidize, and they become really inflammatory in our body. And then up from that is trans fats. So they're really bad. And that's your margarine. So they've taken a seed oil, done something funky to it, and made it like this butter, and that is really, really inflammatory. Like, it's not only is it an oil that's gone rancid, it's been modified in some way that it has really inflammatory effects in the body. And I think they also have noticed that trans fats start to coat the cells in your brain, like mucous memory, and so it stops signaling from occurring with your neurotransmitters. So that can cause depression and inflammation, and trans fats are really bad, really bad for your LDL, which is your quote unquote bad cholesterol. From like, it makes it go really high, and you get high cholesterol, and that's bad for your heart. So the trans fats that we know, like when we just buy canola oil off the shelf and margarine, like they're no good. But if you're getting like flaxseed oil out of the fridge from a health food store, like that, a little bit of that every day is really great for you. So,
that makes so much sense, because everything I see is stop seed oils now, stop it now. But it's like, we need it in moderation, but from a nutritional source, basically.
And just understanding that the molecular structure of those oils, like they're just really volatile and sensitive. So for instance, like butter and ghee, you can pretty much leave them on the bench and they're fine and they're stable, and like they don't really go rancid that easily. I mean, ghee would last a bit longer than butter, but so they can tolerate high heats. Like, you can cook in ghee and it doesn't become inflammatory or carcinogenic very easily. But you cook in like a seed oil, and it's instantly gone funny. And it's not great for the body. So
that makes sense to me now, because I was just a bit confused, and I think a lot of people are, like, whether if it's good, if it's bad, should I be too cautious, should I not be? But I think flax seeds sound like the good go-to.
Yeah, definitely. And like your nuts and seeds in general, like eating them in their whole form is probably easier as well. Like, if you buy flaxseed oil, you really have to make sure it's like away from sunlight and in the fridge, and like you've got to take care of it. But if you just got like nuts in an airtight containment in the cupboard, like they're chilling, like they're fine. You can just eat them, and it doesn't have they won't be going rancid as easily. So.
And when you touched on, this is completely different to trans fat and seed oils, but when you mention like oil being in bottles, that's why I don't longer drink any liquids in bottles anymore, because I'm aware that when it becomes like heated, it can then release chemicals into whatever you drink, and whatever water or Coke, Powerade, whatever it is.
The plastics from the bottles goes in there, and that's really bad, particularly for fertility in both men and women. It really affects your hormones. They can bind to, like in women, they like bind to estrogen receptors and mess up your menstrual cycle, and affect the quality of your eggs, and like it's really bad. Like, and it's kind of crazy that like they have done good in that most countries have sort of phased out BPA. Like, you'll see a lot of bottles say BPA free, because that was one of the most gnarly ones for the body. But there are still a lot of chemicals in plastic bottles that are going to cause havoc. So avoiding that, and particularly avoiding them heated, like not microwaving those like plastic foods that come in plastic containers. Like, don't put it in the microwave, because it'll really activate it and put it in the body.
That's why I think it's important, like investing in just like $20 just into like a good water bottle.
Definitely, and a nice like steel or glass one. I have been using steel a bit more than glass, because I accidentally broke one, so they can be a bit of a hazard, the glass ones.
And especially before we move on from the trans fats too, because I saw the study as well that consuming trans fats can increase your risk of depression by as much as 48%. Which is high. It's just good to understand that, because if you are feeling symptoms of depression, it's just good to like it could be multiple things, but it's good just to understand, like maybe it might be this, just so you can get an understanding of why you're feeling the way you are.
Exactly. Yeah. And like a lot of these foods, like McDonald's, right, it's a great example because it's got the refined sugar that we've talked about. It's got trans fats, all their patties and that, and their chips are cooked in trans fats. And then it's got they have like preservatives and colors and flavors added, and all of those things really have an effect on your neurochemistry. Yeah. So definitely just note that as well. If you like eat something, how you feel afterwards, and go, oh, that might have been cooked in this or contained that, and
because it's so interesting, because the next one we're talking on is I feel like we've already talked about the processed foods, but the part within that is artificial sweetness. And I feel like that is a big one because it's being linked to behavioral and cognitive problems. And like even neuropsychological symptoms too.
It's I'm glad that they're finally banning aspartame, which is it's like in like a lot of zero sugar, like soft drinks and chewing gums. And
I've seen that in like the
like
sugar-free syrup that like coffee shops do as well.
There's sugar replacements. Because that one has been linked with cancer and lots of other like actual neurological diseases, like I think in maybe Alzheimer's and things like that as well. And then huge on our behavior, the way it affects our mood and our concentration and things like that. But the big thing is like with aspartame, it's very toxic as well. Like it's just it's cool. They've now linked it with cancer. So
I had a friend that would drink an excessive amount of Pepsi Max every day. And then after about 2 years, she ended up having to get rushed to hospital and had to get surgery because of the amount of like the sugar replacement she had.
And also the other thing is with those sugar replacements is it is very confusing for the body. So your taste receptors go, oh, this is sweet. In preparation for receiving a lot of sugar, we'll pump out a bit of insulin, but then it doesn't actually get any sugar. And so you've just got, it can really mess with your like blood sugar regulation and lead to like hyperglycemia or diabetes and things like that. So any sort of like metabolic syndrome. So they're just not great on all levels.
Because like someone like myself, like I love fizzy drinks, but I've replaced fizzy drinks with kombucha and sparkling water. Is that like, are they good replacements?
Definitely. Kombucha as well. Like particularly like the strong brews, like they eat it. The bacteria eats the sugar, so the less sweet tasting it is, the more it's eaten it up. Because I used to make some of my own, and sometimes I'd just forget about it and leave it, and I'd be pretty much just drinking vinegar by the end. But it's like, it's pretty cool, and really great for gut health as well.
100%. And I feel like it probably needs moderation too. Like you shouldn't drink too much, but
always in moderation. But I still think, like, for instance, my mum, she will only drink water if it's fizzy, and you don't want to have like too much carbonated stuff. It can kind of have an effect on your bones and your gut health and that. But I still think it's better that she drinks water than like none at all. So
it's a good starting point.
Yes, exactly.
And I feel like we should move through to nutrient deficiencies. And I'm like personally keen to understand this a bit more, because I feel like there is a lot of deficiencies at the moment, with not enough sunlight, with a lot of the work being indoors, not being outside, not eating the right foods or drinks. And the first one that we wrote down was B1. So like it helps convert glucose or blood sugar into fuel. And it's going to help it get into the brain as well. So the B vitamins are so essential, and I think they're often overlooked. Like we focus a lot on like vitamin C and vitamin D and things like that, but the B vitamins are so good for your central nervous system, your stress response, and B1 for giving you energy, like just straight up glucose into the body, into the cells. So B1 is really important. And then we've got the folate and the B12, which are probably the next like talked about and important. They're really great they're part of the methylation process. So that is how your body makes like a lot of different things, neurotransmitters, how well it detoxifies, how well it clears histamine out of the body. So if you don't
for instance, you could be eating a good like diet and getting enough amino acids to make neurotransmitters, but if you don't have enough B vitamins, then you can't really, like your methylation process won't happen and you can't actually create those neurotransmitters from the amino acids. So they're really important, and it's really common to have those deficiencies because these B vitamins, they are water soluble, what we call water soluble vitamins. So we lose them through sweat and urine, and they just get out of the body that way. They don't really recirculate. And so people are often deficient, particularly if we use up a lot if we're stressed, if we're active and all these things. So I think that people can really notice as well when they start supplementing, I feel so much more energized, or my brain's a bit clearer and things like that. Yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, that makes sense, because especially with B12, that makes sense to me now because I'm quite an active person. That's probably why I was probably deficient in it, probably not eating enough of the foods that contain it too, but that's probably a mixture of both.
Yes, definitely. They're really they found a lot in like meat and seafood and things like that. And so I think that that's also a big factor of why when I started eating more meat as opposed to plant protein, I really noticed a difference in my mental health, because I'm getting the cofactors as well that help me turn the protein into... I stick with my hands too much, hitting the mic. That helped me, turn it into actual like neurotransmitters, so my brain is working properly.
And like even with B6, because this was interesting to me because it connects like the serotonin pathway with the I'm gonna butcher that word there, the tryptophan, that's it, tryptophan.
So tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin, so it gets converted into serotonin. You need it to help you utilize, because you get tryptophan from your foods. It's in like bananas and chocolate and all this stuff. And so you'll be getting the base material to create your serotonin, but if you don't have these B vitamins to turn it into that, then you're not getting that serotonin. Which is a bummer, because we need it to feel happy.
100%. And it's just, it's so cool to understand this on a mental health perspective, but also just like as an overall well-being as humans. Next one is magnesium. And magnesium, this is something that I have implemented into my life. I know a lady who has a magnesium spray and roll-on business, and she was just like religious to me to use magnesium. And then she gave me a bottle of magnesium because I told her I struggled to sleep at night. She told her to spray it on the back of my legs and spray it on my feet every night. And like it helps me sleep so much now.
So good.
And like,
magnesium's another one that's made a huge difference in my life. It's one of the electrolytes, and it's a mineral that is also water soluble. So we again lose it so much through stress, sweat, physical activity, all of that. And I would say most of the nation, if they're not supplementing, are deficient. It's one of the more common deficiencies, and it's present in a lot of like fruits and vegetables, and people aren't really eating their fruits and veggies, so they're not getting it a lot. But it's so important for relaxation of both the muscles and the mind. And it's great for heart health as well. Helps with blood pressure and all of this. It's so great. Often people will, like I've actually had clients who their doctors have gotten to the point where they've diagnosed them with fibromyalgia, like end of the road, can't work out what's wrong with them. And I've said, okay, like while I'm waiting for tests, why don't we, I'll just give you some basic things, magnesium and that. And then after just giving them magnesium, they're like, I don't have any pain anymore. It's just because they're that deficient that their muscles are in agony, like to touch, like they got these fibromyalgia pain, and it's just a severe magnesium deficiency. That's astounded me. And so they don't need the diagnosis anymore. Obviously that is not always what causes fibromyalgia. It's actually like a small part of it. But it's just, when you don't have it, the body is just not happy, not functioning.
That's why magnesium baths are so good.
Yes, absolutely. Especially before bed, you're going to sleep like a baby.
Literally. So what are the best ways to get magnesium into your body?
It's one of the ones that I really do recommend supplementing, because our needs are just so high, particularly if you've got a stressful job or a physically active job. It's going to be hard to get it through diet, because also like our soils today are pretty depleted of the nutrients. So even if you are eating like a really healthy diet, like sometimes even that's not enough. So magnesium is one that I recommend most people supplement. Of course, like talk to your doctor if you're on medication and all that, but there's like a few brands that are like really good that'll make like nighttime formula ones to help you sleep and daytime formula ones to like help you active muscles. And then of course, the baths and the rubs, the magnesium oil rubs that we do absorb a lot transdermally, like through our skin. And that's really great, particularly if you're somebody who gets like physical cramps, like rubbing the magnesium directly onto the cramp. It's awesome. It really relaxes it. So yeah, like because I was someone that struggled with sleep a lot, and I think magnesium has worked best for me than anything I've tried. Yeah, I love it.
I feel like these next two are probably the two most common I've seen personally in today's society, and we'll go on one by one. But the first one is vitamin D, and I know like where I'm from in England, there's not much sun at all. Very rare to get exposure of it, even though you came through the clouds, but it might be more of a watered down version of it. In Australia, you might have more access to it, but it still feels like not enough people are accessing it. So I'd just like to hear your take on vitamin D.
Because we also have a lot of fear here, and rightfully so in Australia, like because we had the hole in the ozone layer that was so large for so long. We were getting like we just have so much skin cancer because most of us are from Europe, from England, that have come in a few generations back and are getting just burnt to a crisp and forming these melanomas that are like really horrible for our bodies and immune system. So we're like got a good slip slop slap culture.
Been on the boat.
and so that is good to prevent us getting the skin cancers, but also it's blocking us from getting vitamin D from the sun. So I would say like there are actually some apps that tell you like the UV index of the day and like whether it's safe to get a little bit of a sun exposure. And the best is to just like like early hours of the morning where it's a bit like gentler. Get it on your skin, particularly your stomach is where you absorb most. So if you can get your belly out if it's not too cold, get some sun on there, then that'll like help you get it from the sun and convert it in the body into vitamin D, which is so important for so many things. There are some foods that help. So cod liver oil, that's kind of why I take it as well. And mushrooms that have been left in the sun, they grow in the dark, but if you harvest them and then put them in the sun for a little bit, they absorb it. They absorb the vitamin D, and then if you eat it. But not everybody has time to put their mushrooms in the sun. So cod liver oil is a great way to get it just naturally. But it is something that I do think is really important to get tested regularly, like in a blood test, just to see your levels, because often in winter as well, you might need to supplement just to get your levels right. And it's so important for lots of different processes in the body, for your bone density and for your immune health, for your brain health. So it's a really, really important vitamin.
I like how you touched about doing the mornings, because that's something I do now. Like I do go shirtless in the sun in the mornings. The reason why I did it wasn't for vitamin D, but I'm going to contribute that to it now. But the original one was because of Andrew Huberman talks about like the circadian rhythm. So if you get sunlight in the eyes when you first wake up, it helps just that cycle. So now it's cool to know I'm getting a double.
Getting all of it. The circadian rhythm, that's another one that it's one of the basics, our water, our food and sunlight that we've really lost touch with as well. Like, getting that sunlight in your eyes, it's going to help you produce the healthy amount of cortisol that you need in the morning, and then help you produce the right amount of melatonin you need at night to go to sleep. Whereas a lot of us are like sleeping with blackout blinds and not getting up like with the sun and just bolting out the door and then staying on our phones all night and not letting melatonin creep up and just having the worst sleep. So I'm guilty of that sometimes. Getting that sunlight, it's so good for the circadian rhythm, and double bonus with the vitamin D.
That's why I love Matthew Walker's work. He's like a specialist in sleep, because I feel like the fundamentals is sleep, eat, and basically sunlight, nature and all that, because I feel like we can try and do all the other hacks besides the fundamentals, and I think it's cool to be able to start at the base and then work outwards from there.
And you'll find as well, like sometimes I feel like clients perhaps might even be a little bit disappointed that I'm telling them something so basic, but I'm like, no, please believe me, like if you master this, a lot of these other issues will fall away. And they do. So as soon as they start getting their sleeping right and their eating right, and moving their body, all these aches and pains and chronic lingering things are just dissolve. But of course, there's sometimes it's hard to start that if you're such in a chronic inflamed state. So that's where the herbs and the nutrients can kind of help push you in the right direction. And then when you have enough energy to actually start changing your lifestyle, then everything falls into place. And it's,
I think it's important for people to know it's a journey as well. Like, you know, things aren't going to happen overnight. You just got to trust the journey, trust the process.
So and it's always a long one. Like for however many years that you've been sick, you know, you can probably expect that there'll be not quite the same amount of years getting well, but like maybe half. You need that amount of time to like really let the body adapt to a new way of living and change and feeling. So
100%. And our last one is, and I see this one a lot, is iron deficiency.
Yes.
Could you please talk to us a bit about iron, the deficiency of it, and why it's occurring?
Yes. So iron is, well, the deficiency is really common in women and people who menstruate because it's a big component of our blood. And so if you've got heavy periods, you'll be losing a lot of that. So it sometimes like it feels like as a woman like a constant battle that I'll get my stores up and then, you know, maybe you'll have like a really heavy bleed and then it's like I feel like I'm starting again. And so that's a common reason. And then also if you have any gut issues, like and you're losing a bit of like blood through your gastrointestinal tract, which a lot of people do and they don't realize. They might have an ulcer, they might have like a fissure or something like quite significant. They can lose a lot of blood that way, and that can contribute to anemia. And then also just not having it enough in your diet or not absorbing it well from your diet. So iron, essentially what it does in the body is that its main function is it binds oxygen to your blood cells, and then as your blood cells travel around your body, it's delivering that oxygen to all different parts of the body, and particularly the brain. So brain fog is a huge one for iron deficiency, or just absolute like mental fatigue, like not even having the energy to even think, because you're literally starved of oxygen. And so you can notice other things like your hair will fall out because oxygen's not going to those follicles and like delivering nutrients and all of that. And the body is kind of obviously not prioritizing as well, because it's like we've got to put the nutrients to staying alive, not into growing hairs and nails and skin and all of that. So it's really important. It's important for the immune system as well, in keeping your delivering nutrients around, and then also just having a good like resilience. So if you've got good iron levels, you'll have better vitality, better blood pressure and all these things. So you'll just feel a bit more vital and more resilient. So people can sometimes even eat enough, like they'll be eating a lot of meat, but they're not absorbing it. So that's another thing you need to work on. Why is your gut lining not breaking it down and absorbing it efficiently? And it might be not enough stomach acids. You can have lemon in your water in the morning, and things like that, and help you break down the protein and get the iron out and around the body. Or you might not have enough cofactors. So copper and vitamin C and a few other minerals help you break down and utilize iron as well. So it's not always just one thing, or there's all the vitamins and minerals always work together to get the vitamin or the nutrient to where it needs to be in the body. So
makes so much sense, because I've seen iron, especially with a lot of the women in my life or women that I've worked with, is that they do struggle with iron deficiency. So it's really interesting to know that when we talked about the gut, how it might not even be as absorbing the nutrients, and knowing that as well has been a big eye opener for me to even understand on a personal level.
Definitely, iron is really important, and I do think people who are who are menstruating in their reproductive years, like they really should get it tested regularly, because just a little bit of a drop and you'll just have a cascade of effects and just feel rubbish. So it's good to stay on top of, for sure. Well,
I feel like I've learned so much today. I think that is all of our topics done.
Sweet.
Do you have any final words, anything you'd like to say before we finish up, or any other things you'd like to touch on?
I feel like there was something, but I've kind of forgot. I spoke a little earlier about
was it, genetic issues, MTHFR?
I spoke a bit about that. Yes. And so that is something that will also affect people's mental health big time. And also it's quite common with like you can sometimes see, like I'll see it in when I'm taking someone's medical history and family history, and I'll see lots of mental illness in the family, and like I can almost predict sometimes that they've probably got like a mutation, like this MTHFR gene mutation, because it is so important for how well you detoxify, and also like it's really the methylation process, which the gene impairs. It impairs this process. That process is really important for like converting an amino acid called homocysteine into methionine, which is then used to make neurotransmitters. And if you're not doing that, then that homocysteine will get really high, and that has a really big impact. They've actually noticed high homocysteine with behavioral issues in children and autism and things like that, and then also mental health, and it's really bad for your heart health as well. So having high homocysteine is more of a risk than smoking for having like major heart issues.
Yeah, wow.
So that is something that I really feel like should be talked more as well, because it does affect 30% of the population, and once you start supporting that pathway and methylating better, which you can do through using activated B vitamins in a very careful way, and helping the body detoxify, because it affects your detoxification. So if your liver's not detoxifying well, then you've got toxins circulating around in your bloodstream, which really makes you feel mentally crap, and like also physically terrible. So often most of my clients actually who have chronic issues have this gene mutation, and once I start working on that pathway with them, everything begins to shift, including like they're like, I didn't even realize that I was so anxious or I was so depressed or whatever. And it's a big one with histamine as well. Methylating properly helps you remove histamine from the body, and so if you don't have it, you get an accumulation of histamine in the body, which not only results in allergies and skin issues, but it also really affects your brain, because histamine in the brain is really excitatory, and so it can contribute to insomnia and anxiety and irritability. I'll notice as well, like when people have hay fever, they'll be like, I'm just this time of year when my allergies are marking up, like I'm just so much more angry and I'm just so much more irritated, and I'm not sleeping. And not only is it annoying to have to blow your nose every 3 seconds, but it's also had the effect that histamine's having on the brain. So getting those pathways working, so it's clearing out, and all these other processes are working. It's also really important for DNA replication, but that's a whole nother wormhole. So so that's another one that I guess that if people feel like they are stuck with their health and they're not getting answers, that's one thing that they should consider, particularly if they've got an overlapping of mental health and physical health sort of issues. Getting that tested and then working on that pathway is probably a missing link for a lot of people. So
yeah, that makes sense, because I grew up with a lot of allergies. It's better now, but just every now and then I'm triggered by, like, if someone's mowing the lawns, you trigger like that what's it called, that response to it.
Histamine response. You can have allergies without having MTHFR, but if it's like a real chronic thing, then probably. But you never know, you might have it.
Yeah, exactly. Tell them to do some research.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Is there anything else?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, just want to say thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
I'd like to give you the opportunity to let the audience know where they can find you,
sure.
how they can connect with you and your work, because after today's episode, like, so much you went into, it's awesome. I guarantee people want to reach out to you.
Yes, well, if you've made it this far, thank you for listening, everyone. And you can find me on Instagram. I'm omne_wellness. I'm pretty sure that's me. And I work out of the Well Collective in Tweed Heads. We're a multimodality clinic. We're fairly new, and I'm there 3 to 4 days a week, and I would love to help you. That's what you'd like help with. So yeah.
Awesome. I'll link it all in the bio as well, so people can just go straight to it in case they get lost. But thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Cheers, guys.